Hello and welcome to the first podcast produced by Connected Everything. My name is Oliver Fisher and I've recently joined Connected Everything as the Knowledge and Exchange Lead. For those of you who might not be aware, Connected Everything is a network plus funded by the Engineering and Physical Research Council, and the network aims to accelerate digital manufacturing research between academia and industry. A key part of how we achieve this goal is through funding feasibility studies that demonstrate how techniques and approaches can be transferred from other disciplines into industrial and manufacturing contexts. On today's episode, I'm joined by Professor Sarah Sharples and Debra Fearnshaw, and we will be discussing how to write a successful feasibility study application. Sarah is a Professor of Human Factors in the Department of Mechanical Materials and Manufacturing Engineering and Pro-Vice Chancellor for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. Sarah leads the Connected Everything and has a rich background of experience of conducting research in the area of digital manufacturing. Debra is the experienced project manager with a demonstrated history of working in higher education and third sector organisations. Debra is responsible for managing two large EPSRC grants, DigiTopt and Connected Everything, both of which collaborate with several universities across the manufacturing. So welcome to you both. And if we dive straight into our first discussion point, which is, if we start with you, Sarah, what is the most important thing to remember when applying for a feasibility study?
I suppose one of the things that's really key for a feasibility study is, and this sounds a bit daft, it's a feasibility study. It's not a research project that's already well formed, that you've been thinking about for 5 years and you've applied for in lots of different places and you want this as a route. It's about trying something new. One of the things that we're really strong on in our feasibility studies is ensuring that people are taking the right level of risk. And that means actually trying something that might fail. It's funny, within an academic career or a research career, very often we're a bit scared of failure. Well, these feasibility studies are exactly there to encourage people to try something a bit risky, but just might be brilliant, to enable that sort of formative data or formative idea to be formed in order to enable hopefully larger and more strategic activities to happen in the longer term.
That's really interesting to hear from. I guess it's quite rare to get funding which can be so kind of open-ended and risk-taking, which it's great that the network's kind of supporting that within digital manufacturing, where there's so many new technologies and possible applications to come from them. Debra, have you had anything in your experience from previous feasibility studies that you think people might have missed, or would you like to raise?
I think really, as I say, we are really looking for original and novel. When people finally get to the panel pitch, which is kind of like the last bit of the process, really making sure that people can describe very clearly what is novel about their work is really important. And the other thing that we're also keen to look at also is actually how industry can engage with the feasibility study as well. So while we appreciate that this might be experimental, we still want to see where that link is with industry. So that's something important for people to remember as well, even at this early stage.
Thank you for that. Great to highlight that kind of industry participation, how cool that is to these applications.
Definitely.
So if, as an applicant, if I was to have a question about applying for the feasibility studies, is it possible to connect with Connected Everything?
Absolutely. Yeah, we really want to hear from people. And this is something that I actually really enjoy. It's a really great part of my job to actually meet with the applicants and understand, more about what you need from the process and how we can make it better. So in the calls for applications, we really do welcome people to get in touch. And all the calls are always available on our website, which is connectedeverything.ac.uk, where all the contact details are for that call, including all the guidance. One of the things that I learnt by doing through the calls that we've had in Connected Everything so far is I do like to produce a quite comprehensive set of FAQs. So but I appreciate, I've worked pretty hard on trying to do that, but there's always something I can miss. So please always, get in touch with me and then we can answer those questions as they crop up.
Oh, that's great to hear. And just to clarify, are those FAQs forwarded with the email advertising the funding?
Yeah, they'll be alongside all the core documents there. So yeah, definitely they will be, with all the core documents for people to refer to.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Sarah, if I come back to you, who are these kind of feasibility studies aimed at? Is there a particular career stage, or are they open to everyone?
So we are particularly keen to have engagement with our feasibility studies from early career researchers. One of the things that we know is that it can be really tough making a start in an academic career, and that something like a feasibility study that's a quite substantial bit of funding can be a really, really helpful opportunity to build an idea that then leads to further funding and further collaborations as well. We had some really, really great examples of success with this in the first iteration of Connected Everything, where people formed partnerships as part of our networking activity with Connected Everything, put in feasibility studies, received funding for those studies, and have since gone on to write great publications, but also partner in further funding activities as well. We're also really, really keen to fulfil our commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion. And the reason for this is that we know that having more diverse teams in delivering technology solutions leads to better solutions. It leads to better research. And we know that at the moment, the manufacturing community is not as diverse as it could be. So we've got a particular element to the process which asks participants to confidentially share their demographic information. And what that allows us to do is to monitor the way that our process potentially ensures that we're attracting as diverse applicants as possible to the activity. It's not about positive discrimination. There's no advantage to having a particular characteristic or not. But what we do make sure is that the way we design the process of application of the feasibility studies ensures that as many people as possible have an opportunity to apply, and that everyone has an equal chance of success based on the quality of their idea and the proposal they put forward.
That's really good to hear. I think really relevant as well, EDI issue, and like you say, specifically within manufacturing, increasing its awareness.
Definitely.
Sorry,
That's
Debra.
one of the reasons for this podcast, really, is try to demystify the process so people hopefully realise that we are an accessible bunch of people, that if they do have any questions at any point of the process, please do contact us.
Yeah.
So I guess a quick question following on from that. Do you know of how successful this new kind of EDI approach has been to previous funding calls? Has it worked, or is it still too early to tell?
Yeah, I can maybe give my perspective, and then Debra's a little bit more deep in the data. So we've been gradually evolving our process ever since we started Connected Everything 4 years ago now. First, we just said, we particularly encourage involvement from early career researchers. That worked really, really well, because we got really strong partnerships between, and we're not excluding senior people, we're just asking for early career researchers to have a leading and a substantive role. So we particularly did well in terms of gender diversity in leadership of the projects, and we also felt that we had addressed some of the issues that we know are around equality of opportunity from those from different ethnicities. With the second iteration of Connected Everything, so we've held 2 rounds now of feasibility studies, we've been much more explicit about our approach. We've been much more proactive in our monitoring, and we've looked very carefully at each stage of the application to see that if there are any particular barriers associated either with the written application stage or the interview stage that we need to address, because what we can then do is identify, for example, that there may be an opportunity in terms of supporting people and mentoring people in preparation for the interview pitch, for example. It's probably not appropriate for us to share too much detail about success we've had so far, because it's really important that we keep people's protected characteristics confidential. But we have been really proactive in our approach, and we have been pleased with the diversity we've achieved so far, but we're not taking our foot off the pedal. It's also worth saying that you really need a critical mass of data to understand what's happened. It's only really at the end of the project that we'll be able to take a really strong look at the diversity amongst all of our participants. And one final thought, and I know that Debra's going to come in with some more detail about the process. I'm very, very keen that we don't just look at a principal investigator in a project. I feel very strongly that the best science is team science, and that actually we should be focusing very strongly on the form and the composition of a research team, and recognising not only those who have academic roles, those who are researchers, those who are research managers, those who are technicians, and those who are supporting the work as well. So we're doing all we can to try and collect as much information about a team as well as about the individuals who lead the activities.
Yeah, I really like that point, and especially agree with the team approach to kind of research and things. It's personally, I always enjoy the projects that get involved with as many people as possible, they're much more enjoyable, and academia can sometimes be a bit lonely, and I think it's great to have as many people in the project as possible. Deborah, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's not entirely an EDI related point, but one of the points that I really wanted to make was about what we really try to do with every single applicant who comes forward for a feasibility study is actually give them detailed feedback. So every application is reviewed by 2 senior people from possibly from industry, from our executive board, from senior academics, and we really make sure that we offer that feedback to those individuals. So throughout the process, they get that feedback, and should the next call be relevant to them and they want to apply again, then they actually do get that opportunity to reapply. And certainly even from feasibility studies that weren't successful in Connected Everything 1, they have come back, they have reapplied, and I'm really pleased to say that people, you know, have had success maybe at the second or third time. And it's not saying that, you know, we want people to be successful the first time ideally, but we always have an open door policy, and that's something that I think is important to encourage people, especially when we're thinking about ECRs, that it might take a couple of times to get it right, and we're happy to support that process.
That's really heartening to hear. It's great that the level of feedback Connected Everything's been able to offer. So if we move on to maybe look at more the questions specific to the proposal, I have one here saying, is it advisable to get someone to look through my proposal before applying it? Should I share it with my wider research team?
So I think there's probably 2 different types of people there. The first is, it's always really helpful if you can have someone who's got experience of writing feasibility studies to take a look at the application. But remember, this is different from, for example, a responsive mode EPSRC type application. Make sure that whoever you ask to review the application is really clear about the criteria that the application is being assessed against, and doesn't, you know, understands what the purpose of this particular call is. But I'd also recommend that you ask someone who isn't necessarily in your own research group just to take a look. One of your peers, perhaps in another research group. I sometimes ask my students to take a look at things that I'm doing, because actually a really good feasibility study proposal should not need the subject expertise in order to understand it. We've got a great group who support the reviewing process, but almost certainly at least one of your reviewers will not be an expert in your particular scientific field. So making sure that you're demonstrating the opportunity of this technology solution, the importance of the problem you're trying to solve, the excitement of the idea you've come up with. Well, lots of people are really well placed to actually review that. So I would say find someone who's in perhaps a slightly different research area and see if they understand and get the point, because if they don't understand it, then you've probably not explained it as well as you could. I don't know, Deborah, if you've got some thoughts about maybe some of the feedback that we've given to people and types of things that people maybe could really sort of focus on in writing a great feasibility study.
I think that non-expert point of view is something that's really important, because again, we don't have the luxury of being able to match every single feasibility study application with an expert. It will, it will be someone who understands the field and has a good grasp of digital manufacturing, but they might not be an absolute expert. So yeah, definitely explain it. Obviously, there are page limits. So for our feasibility studies, you've only got 5 pages in which to explain it. So use those 5 pages carefully, really, to make sure that you get to the meat of it. I think also one thing that we do find is one of the more common weaknesses also in applications is also just about the project plan. So again, that is something that a non-expert can have a look at. Does that project plan make sense? You've only got 6 to 12 months to deliver this feasibility study. So the project plan needs to be fairly convincing that you're going to hit the ground running, you know what you're doing, and you know what those perhaps individual work packages look like. So again, that's something that can be rectified by someone who, might be friends and family. It doesn't necessarily need to be another academic or researcher.
And can I just jump in with one of my probably pet hates, really? If you're trying to write so much and you're fiddling around with the font size and you're desperately trying to squeeze in things in diagrams to get away with word counts and things like that, you're writing too much. Pare it back. Less is more. If you can write a really clear pitch in a paragraph, that's the really important thing. And the feasibility studies that I remember and are the ones that get funded really well, I can describe them. So I'm not an expert in the area, and I can describe them in about 2 sentences. So if you can't describe what you're doing in about 2 sentences, then you've probably not got quite the right balance between the sort of the goal, the impact you're trying to achieve, the novelty of the idea, and it's probably gone into sort of almost a little bit too much detail. So try and step back and think about those 1 or 2 key sentences.
I think that's really important advice to reiterate. It's something I think we're all guilty of from time to time. Just application we're really passionate about. We want to cram as much information as possible and do it as justice, but sometimes we can be harming it rather than helping it. And I think that's answered what was going to be my next question, which would be, what are common mistakes in applications that you've seen? And I think we've covered that. Keep it short, concise.
Keep it short and concise. I would say that sometimes people go into too much technical detail and they forget the what's the point question. So what's new about this? Why is this the right solution? So you might say, right, I've come up with this great technology and it's going to solve the problem. And sometimes you're reading it and you're going, this is so obvious. Why hasn't everyone thought of this before? So actually thinking about what the particular reason why this is a good and a novel idea is really important to communicate.
Thank you for that. I think that should give everyone lots of good advice. So moving on to like the industry part of feasibility studies, what's any advice for getting industry partners involved, either with the writing or reaching out for partners in the first place? What's the previous experience been with this?
So I'm happy to sort of take this, but I think Debra, there's probably some more that we can sort of follow up on. So I think first of all, if you're fortunate enough to work in a research team where there are already industry connections, that's been something that's been very, very helpful. The catapults as organisations can be very helpful in terms of identifying either themselves as partners or pointing you towards industry partners as well. But also we do have some affiliated industry partners with the network. And Debra, maybe you could talk a little bit about how we can support people with linking up with some of the industry supporters for the network that we've already got.
Definitely. Well, that was going to be my point, really. Hopefully this is one of the things that Connected Everything can really do for, for particularly our early career researchers who are looking for those opportunities to work with industry. So we're delighted that we've got just shy of 400 members currently within the Connected Everything network. Obviously, the majority of those are in the wonderful world of academia, but we do have a very strong representation in industry as well. And with the industry contacts that we've got, if we haven't quite got what you're looking for, then the chances are we know someone who might be able to help. So it is genuinely using the network to do that. And we've got really strong networks with things like the KTN knowledge transfer network as well. So we've got some really great partners to help that happen.
I think that's one of the main advantages of the Connected Everything. It's this industry and academia are both part of it, and it's a great resource to kind of reach out and find people. Another industry related question is, can industry be funded, or does it have to be from an academic background?
Yeah, unfortunately, EPSRC rules don't allow us to fund industry directly.
That's clear and to the point. I think got that one covered. So moving on to the next question, what should I expect from the panel pitch if I get through to this stage? If I've had a successful application approved, what happens on my day?
So for the panel members, it's a really long day. And what's great is tried and tested this now, both in person panel pitches, but also online panel pitches. So we've done both processes to allow for the current COVID circumstances. So really, what we ask people to do is to present a 5-minute pitch on their feasibility study. Pretty much what we find out every single time is that people do run out of time. 5 minutes is a tall ask, but the reason why we make it 5 minutes is to allow more time for Q&A. So each of the panel members will be asking questions during that session. So in the whole session lasts around 20 minutes, of which only 5 minutes is your pitch. And that really is to allow opportunity for that discussion, and also, most importantly, for the feasibility study team presenting, that they have an opportunity to ask the questions as well. And I think one of the things with the panel pitch that we've found is really not about seniority. So it's not about making sure that it's, we appreciate there might be senior academics within the team, but it is making sure that everyone within the team does get an opportunity to present at that pitch and have a voice. We know that for particularly some of the early career researchers, this might be the first time they've had an opportunity to do this. So again, hopefully we want people to be successful, but if you're not successful, at least this is a really good opportunity for you to pull that kind of elevator pitch together and to present your ideas to a panel who is really rooting for you.
That was going to be my next question. Who's invited to the panel pitch? And it sounds like everyone involved in the project, which is
That's it. Obviously, we have representation from the Connected Everything project team itself. So Connected Everything will be chairing the panel, and then we ask industry representatives to come along too, as well as people who represent that that particular call well.
Thank you for that, Deborah. Is there anything?
No, I think Deborah did a great job. I suppose the only thing else I'd say is that this is part of the contribution of Connected Everything, is giving people the opportunity to take part in a process like this, because this is something that you need to do when you're applying for bigger bits of funding in the future of your career. So we have deliberately designed it to help prepare people for future experiences of pitching for funding as well.
And I think this brings me on to my last question, and then I'll let you both have some closing thoughts if there's anything we've missed. So what happens if I'm unsuccessful? I think we covered this briefly with the feedback.
Yeah. I mean, basically, if you're unsuccessful, then we'll give you the feedback, but also there's no reason why you can't try again. Obviously, you need to take on board the feedback, but and we have had situations where people haven't succeeded the first time and they've come back and succeeded a second time. So there's no rules against that. And please do recognise that we do keep the standards quite high. It is a competitive process, and there is a limit on the amount of funding we're allowed to give. So there will be some unsuccessful applications, but that doesn't mean that you should get too disheartened. And we're really keen to give people support in having another shot in the future.
That is reassuring to hear. Anything you would like to add, Deborah, or are you? Yeah.
I suppose the only thing that I want to add is for those that are successful, then we're really proud of our feasibility studies that are successful, and they end up becoming a really core part of our network. They become, real ambassadors for what the network is trying to achieve. So I guess in terms of my last thoughts is preparing for success and give that a thought. We're so pleased to see our feasibilities presented at our annual conference, for example. Also, we get them involved in Connected Everything events and try and showcase their feasibility studies and what they're working towards at every opportunity that we get to help really build their platform. So to say that, what we hope to give you is obviously money to do your feasibility study, but alongside that, we want to really help support your next steps in terms of your academic career as well. Once you get a Connected Everything case study or feasibility study funded, then you really do become part of the family.
I think that's a really positive note to end on if everyone's happy with that. So I think that brings us nicely to the end. So thank you so much to both my co-presenters, Deborah and Sarah. It's been great to get your feedback on and illuminate some light on this process of applying to feasibility studies with Connected Everything.
Thank you, Ollie.
Thanks,
thank you, Ollie. Listeners, please keep an eye out for the next feasibility study funding call, which will be advertised at our website and Deborah's weekly email. And you can sign up for these weekly emails by clicking the big yellow box on our website to join the network. And we look forward to receiving your applications, which should be fantastic after listening to this podcast. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.